Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tired F1 pod. This time coming to you straight after Montreal qualifying and George Russell on pole by nothing, absolutely nothing against Max Verstappen in a resurgent Mercedes. And yet somehow Lewis Hamilton, Sir Lewis Hamilton, 104 poles, is seventh at Canada. Ammar, what the heck is going on? Before you answer that, we're going to have a look at the trace because that's the only way to look at this. We need some data. I have to see it. So here it is. This is the entire qualifying lap for Montreal. So I'm looking at the first runs in quali 3. The wind picked up in the second runs and nobody other than Max Verstappen improved. So I'm looking at their fastest times. And you can see here that George is in turquoise and Lewis is in white. And I've put the marker at the start of sector 3. Up until that point, if you look at the delta, and again, the delta is the difference in speed between the two in terms of who's fastest and who's slowest. George is the reference line in turquoise because he was the faster of the two. When Lewis is below that line, he's faster. And when Lewis is above that line, he's slower. So you can see that actually up until that marker, they're about the same. They're fairly nip and tuck. But then when we get into sector 3, which is from just before the hairpin to the end of the lap, Lewis gradually gets further and further away from that reference line. So he gets slower and eventually ends up 0.28 seconds off of George's time. So let's have a little zoom in on what happened. So this is sector 3 only. And what you can see is at the slowest point of the hairpin, they're both about the same. And they start off the straight about the same as well. But going down the back straight, at the end of that straight, you can see that George is much, much quicker. And their end of straight speed is markedly different. George, although I haven't put it on here, George's end of straight speed was 333 kilometers an hour. Lewis's was 325 kilometers an hour. That is quick, do the maths. 8 kilometer an hour difference. Oh man, Ammar. Ammar needs his calculator this morning.
I'm gonna blast you. You finish what you're doing and then I'm gonna do it.
Sure. So that speed difference is probably it's all down to really the fact that George was behind Alex Albon and got a mega toe into that final chicane. But that's not the end of the story, because have a look at the trace coming out of the chicane. Yeah. So the speed trace shows that George has a nice smooth increase in speed, whereas Lewis, if you look at that line, it's wavy. He puts on speed, takes off speed, puts on speed, takes off speed. And if you look at the throttle trace, it's the same. George is able to apply the throttle much earlier and much more directly, coming out past the wall of champions, whereas Lewis has to come off the throttle. And if you looked at the world feed, you could also see that out of that corner, well, in the middle of that corner, in fact, he had a massive tank slapper. He was on full oppo in the middle of that corner. So he definitely lost some speed. So I think George definitely got a toe. I don't think George gets pole without that toe, but I think he beats Lewis anyway because Lewis had a mistake into that final corner, but it's not there across the entirety of that lap. Lewis, after qualifying, was asked the question, we all bank on you beating your teammate in equal cars in Canada, but didn't happen today. What happened? He said, well, the car felt good in free practice and I turned up in qualifying. I didn't have any grip. Well, fine. We've already done this one a few times now. George and we've already done the why Lewis might not be ahead of George. But Ammar, I'm going to bring you in on this. What's going on here?
Okay. 5 minutes. I've waited 5 minutes. This is the first few words I'm going to say. And the first thing I really want to say to all of y'all is that you don't deserve any of this. You don't deserve. On a day when Mercedes has put the car on pole, but we would have not even given them a fighting chance to make it in the top half of the top 10. This is what we're doing. We're gonna jump down Lewis Hamilton's throat for not beating George Russell for whatever reason. Look, he made a mistake. It's okay. It happens. Not a big deal. It's all right. You
8-1,
guys should be
Ammar.
celebrating. You guys should be
8,
celebrating.
8-1. 8-1.
Great.
8-1.
Very good.
Explain that.
Because that's where the points are given, right? Excellent. That's where the points are given for the 8-1. Of
George
course.
is 5-2 up in the races. 5-2 up in the races. That is where the points are given, and that's based on the fact that he's qualifying better than Lewis is.
I've only got my first 30 seconds. I just want to say this. We are bearing the lead here. The lead-in story is that A, Red Bull are in trouble. B, McLaren don't look anywhere close to being competitive, although Lando did put it effectively on pole, right? Ferrari are out and Q2. How are we bearing the lead on all of this? We just got done talking about, it's not been 24 hours since we were talking about, is Leclerc now a championship contender? Is Red Bull in trouble? And oh, by the way, the real comp that we should be doing here is Russell versus Verstappen, because that is the story here. Why are we doing this negative kind of thing? Who cares?
We can definitely talk about that. And we will do after the race. But right now, this is the story. Why is George Russell so much further ahead of Lewis Hamilton in the qualifying head-to-head?
Because Lewis Hamilton is checked out. He's checked out already. He's never going to say it. He's never going to say it. And it's quite okay for a person for a champion, for a 7-time, almost an 8-time champion to be checked out in this weird, wonky gap year of a season. It is okay. It gets nothing. George can beat him 22-1, I think 23 or 23-1, 24 races. What does that gain? Nothing. George is the future of Mercedes until Kimi Antonelli comes in.
I'm going to be very, very, very precise about this. This is not about what it means in terms of race performances. What it means is about their speed, their relative speed. And this is telling me 8-1 and to be beaten at Montreal. And Lewis did not look happy about this. He was after the race, again, making excuses because to him, it does mean something. Whether it means something to you or not, it does mean something to him. And for me, this is more evidence, not that he's checked out, because that's not what somebody looks like when they've checked out. This is George Russell giving us further evidence that he is possibly one of the 2 quickest drivers on the grid right now.
George Russell is what? One of the 2 quickest drivers on the grid right now? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Now you finally made it to the point. We're 8 minutes into this, and now you're getting... So this is not about George versus Lewis, right? Now you're saying he's one of the 2 fastest drivers on the grid. Is that what we're talking about now?
That is where I'm going to have to... That's where I'm going to leave it. Because we're going to run out of time.
Now this, so we okay, yeah.
But
here's the one thing we bear putting out there. It is Saturday. It is on the heels of a very weird topsy-turvy kind of weekend where 24 hours ago, Daniel Ricciardo was getting blasted by Jacques Villeneuve for not even deserving a place on the grid, and now he's 4th or 5th, whatever he is. It is a crazy weekend, and I would just say, hold all your proverbial horses, pun intended, because tomorrow is going to be a different day.
Ammar, the race doesn't matter when it comes to qualifying. I'm talking about 1 lap pace.
But the race matters when we make the assessment.
But we're not talking about an overall performance.
And this qualifying is unlike any other qualifying too. We can even say that because
what about the other 9?
Ferrari,
what about the other 7? What about the other 7?
All are great. Okay, great. Let's crown George Russell the king of whatever this year. What do we want to crown him as? Let's just go do that because 8-1 is awesome. Way to go, George.
It's pretty impressive, and I don't think anyone wants to hear it. I don't think anyone wants to hear it.
I think at the FIA gala at the end of the year, he should be given an award. I mean, right alongside Max or whoever wins it, like that should be the next thing we should put. Like, what are we doing here? What are we? Hey,
we are talking about qualifying after a qualifying session.
No, I am saying talking about qualifying.
Yes, we are.
We're not talking.
Yes, we're
talking about one specific thing about qualifying. First of all, let's give George Russell a lot of credit because he's been on it.
I wish you would.
And let's give Mercedes a lot of credit, huh?
I wish you would.
You wish I would. I wish I am doing that.
Really?
Like you painted me in the corner, and I've had this conversation with our good friend Diplo. No, and I always said it's TBD, and I still maintain points are given out tomorrow. I'm not.
Not on
Excellent story
qualifying
thus
pace.
far.
Not on
Okay,
qualifying
great.
pace. I have to keep
Nobody has
saying,
ever
Ammar, I'm
won.
not talking about
And the next
overall.
time,
I am not
and the
talking about
next time
overall performance.
someone is added into the pantheon of greatness just on qualifying results, let me know. I'll come to that party too. But that's not where we're at. Absolutely, George Russell deserves all the credit in the world. Mercedes both look like they deserve pole. I don't. Lewis made a mistake right in that last run, and that's just it. That's just it. He made a mistake. Why can't it just be that? Why does it have to be more than that?
Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna have to call it. Guys, if you like what we're doing here, please please subscribe. If you're absolutely in Ammar's corner, tell us. If you're absolutely in my corner, although I don't know what that corner is, I'm super sad that Lewis is not as quick as George.
My corner is the crying Ferrari fan.
But that is the reality here. Please leave us a comment. We'll read them. We reply to as many as we possibly can, and we'll see you after the race.